right. Good morning. And it's Bible study time again at Calvary Baptist Church. It's the first of the year, and we're just finishing up a unit that we've done the last 5 Sundays through December, and now we're looking at wrapping this up, session 6. And we've talked about a name like no other, the name of God, and looked at it kind of a different perspective on what does really the name of God mean? What does it carry for it? Or for us, what does it teach us? What does it help us to understand? So, like today at the protection of God's name, and we go to Psalm 91. And who was the author of Psalm 91? We don't know, but Psalm 90 was attributed to Moses. And Moses, that's pretty old. That's going back a long way, isn't it? That was a poem or a prayer or a song of Moses. And Psalm 91 looks a lot like Psalm 90. So there are some who say, well, Moses must have written it. Well, we don't know that. But we do know that it has a lot like it. And the person who wrote it was probably trying to convey the same kind of things. It's the psalm, and as we read through it, you'll figure this out. It's the psalm that connects to Martin Luther writing, "A mighty fortress is our God." And you think about Martin Luther being the great reformer during the Reformation period. Martin Luther had a lot of people who were out to get him. And matter of fact, he had to kind of flee where he lived and go somewhere else because people were not nice. He was being persecuted. And so he was in hiding even for a little bit, kind of semi-hiding. And but God put a lot of people who were on his side as far as the Reformation is concerned, and put a lot of people next to him to kind of protect him or kind of help him and help him continue to do the work. And if you've never read or studied anything about the Reformation period, it's a great place to go and look and see the hand of God as he led these reformers. They didn't always agree on how things ought to be, but how he led them to come out of the Catholic Church, come out of what had been the religion of Christianity for so long, and to really start something new and to be more in touch with God. And I believe the Reformation was a great thing for the world because it opened back up the opportunity for Christianity to spread freely and openly like it hadn't since the first few centuries of after Christ. So anyway, so let's just jump right in, and we'll look at, again, the title of this is The Protection of God's Name. And we'll just look at a few factors. I'm kind of running out of time here today, but we'll just look at a few factors of how God protects us. So the psalmist said, 91 verse 1, "The one who lives under the protection of the Most High." Oh, how does God protect us? The protection of the Most High dwells in the shadow of the Almighty. "I will say concerning the Lord, who is my refuge and my fortress, my God in whom I trust, he himself will rescue you from the bird trap, from the destructive plague. He will cover you with his feathers. You will take refuge under his wings. His faithfulness will be a protective shield. You will not fear the terror of the night, the arrows that fly by day, the plague that stalks in darkness, or the pestilence that ravages at noon." And so in this first passage, these first 6 verses, we see that God can be trusted to protect us because he has the power to do it. And what does the psalmist say? Well, he says, the one who lives under the protection of the Most High. And that term Most High is God Almighty. When you think about the height of God, Paul in the New Testament talked about the height and the depth and the breadth and, all those aspects of how big God really is. Now, you think about him being Most High, there's no authority over him. He is the highest authority of them all. He says, whoever dwells in the shadow of the Almighty. Well, if he is the highest, then everything's going to be in his shadow, isn't it? And when we trust in him, we're dwelling under that shadow. And then he is the Almighty. He uses that great term there to talk about not only God's height, but when he talks about the Almighty, he is Most High. He is Almighty. There's nothing he cannot do. And so those are just great terms to think about in who God is. The psalmist reminds us of that. And then he says, "I will say concerning the Lord, who is my refuge and my fortress." There you go. There's 2 images that really can pick at your brain a little, can't they? My refuge. In other words, he's my place where I go to get away from all the troubles and the burdens of the world, all the cares of the world. But he's also my fortress. He's the place where I go to where I know there's a wall around me. There's a force around me that's going to protect me and take care of me no matter what. And then he says in verse 3, he himself will rescue you from the bird trap. The bird trap is just a snare. It's a snare where you and I get caught up before we even know it. Sometimes sin overwhelms us, or we do something. We think, why did I even do that? That's not in my heart. Why did I even say that? That's not what I'm thinking. But sin can do that to us, can't it? It can just catch us off guard. It can kind of suck us in, and it's that way. So sin is like that sometimes. And or sin is kind of like the destructive plague that he says next, that it can be all around us and we think, oh, we're protected, we'll be okay, that plague's not going to get us. And then the next thing you know, sin has overwhelmed us and it takes us in. So the snare trap is just kind of like instant, but this plague, it can kind of just hover over and finally get us. And so that's what the psalmist is saying here. But he says he will cover you with his feathers. He will take refuge with you under his wings. And what a great thing that is for us, that God is the all-encompassing bird, so to speak, that he covers over us and he protects us and he keeps us from those things. What does he keep us from? Well, in the next verses he says the terror of the night. You will not fear the terror of the night. Most things that are terror happen in darkness, don't they? The terror of the night. Things can just come, and in the day of the psalmist, he didn't have all these gadgets like we have, LED lights and all this cool stuff and things. When it was dark, it was dark. There was no light anywhere. And if the sun wasn't shining or there weren't any stars out, you were in trouble. You might not see where you were going. And so, but you don't need to be afraid of that, of what might get you in the night. Nor does he say the arrows that fly by day. Most of the war took place in the daytime, and I think people who really have a cause to fight for will fight in the light. The people who are conniving and who are crooked and who are fighting for something that's not as just, or that isn't just, they'll fight at night, or they'll fight in secret. And so he says, the arrows that fly by day, or the terror of the night, or the plague that stalks in darkness, or the pestilence that ravages at noon. You don't have to worry about those things, because God is, for those who trust him, he is the one where you can take refuge. He is the one who is your fortress. He is the one who will protect you. Okay? So isn't that good to know? Good promises. We could probably just stop right there, and that'd be enough for a Sunday school lesson, wouldn't it? But he goes on. Here's what he says then next. He says, we can rest in God's power to keep us secure. In other words, God just isn't going to shelter us and hover over us and take care of us. He's going to use everything he has in his arsenal to take care of us. Listen, beginning in verse 9, he says, because you have made the Lord my refuge, the Most High, your dwelling place, no harm will come to you. No plague will come near your tent, for he will give his angels orders concerning you to protect you in all your ways. They will support you with their hands so that you will not strike your foot against a stone. You will tread on the lion and the cobra. You will trample the young lion and the serpent. Okay, so resting in God's power will keep us secure. You made the Lord my refuge, the Most High, your dwelling place. And the writer of our commentary for this lesson reminded us that it's for those who trust in God. It's not a universal thing. It's not just for everybody. It's for those who put their trust in God. God doesn't teach us universalism, and that is it's for everybody. He doesn't teach pluralism either, that people will be saved no matter what path they go. People that say, well, God is a God of love, he's not going to harm anyone. Well, that's not true. He doesn't harm anyone. People harm themselves, and because they choose not to put their faith and their trust in him. So the Bible teaches that there's only one way to be protected by God, to be in his care and under his wings, and that is to put your faith and trust in Jesus Christ, who died for our sin, who died to pay the penalty of wrath for our sin and our judgment from God. That's the only way. So he says, God is my refuge. He goes again and talks about how he is the Most High. That is his dwelling place. And he says, no harm will come to you. And again, that's not a universal thing. But it's if you are truly putting your trust in him, that he will save, he will protect, and he will care for. What does he protect you from? Um, well, he talked there at the end about the lion and the cobra. You can trample on the young lion and the serpent. And that's a parallel. Verse 13 is one of those Hebrew parallelisms that, in the first clause, he talks about one thing, and then in the second clause, he talks about the same thing, only words it a little differently. But then he says in verse 12 that they will support you with their hands so that you will not strike your foot against a stone. And you might have thought, as we were reading through those verses, those middle verses there, where have I heard this before? Well, if you go back to Matthew chapter 4 and you read where Jesus was tempted by Satan, these are the verses these are the things that Satan quoted Jesus. God's not going to let you be harmed. He's not going to let you do this. You are his. If you even strike your foot against a stone, he's going to come and he's going to take care of you. He's going to watch you. And so that's probably where you've heard that. That's probably where you've gotten that. But just remember out of this that the promise of physical protection, that is really what this is getting at here. This is an eternal thing. This is a spiritual thing, that he's going to protect you spiritually. He's going to protect you eternally. And that, will God keep you from disease? Sure. But will you might maybe get sick too? Sure. We live in a sin-sick world. We live in a broken world. And here's an interesting thing that this author said that I'm not going to doubt them, but it's pretty powerful. And when you think about it, he said more Christians died from persecution in the 20th century than in the previous 19 centuries combined. So have Christians, just because you put your faith in God, does it mean you're exempt from any problems or any trouble or any heartache or anything else? Absolutely not. And that statement that more people were martyred for being Christians in the 20th century than the whole 19 before, that is huge to me. Of course, a lot of that is a population thing. There's more people. But the other thing is there's more persecution. And that is pretty telling to me, that we're not promised a free ride all the way through here just because we put our trust in God. But we are promised an eternal home in heaven. Okay? And then the last passage is Psalm 91, verses 14 through 16. And we think about, what does God promise us in these verses? The psalmist said, because he has his heart set on me, I will deliver him. I will protect him because he knows my name. When he calls out to me, I will answer him. I will be with him in trouble. I will rescue him and give him honor. I will satisfy him with a long life and show him my salvation. And in my book here, I just highlighted all those verbs in that, because if God's protecting me, if I'm the one who has my heart set on him and I'm depending on him, or I'm trusting in him to take care of me, here's what he's going to do: deliver, protect. When I call, he will answer. He's going to answer. He's going to be with me in trouble. He's going to rescue me. I'll give him honor. That's a verb on my part, but the rescue is him. He will satisfy me with a long life. And he's going to show me, reveal to me his salvation. And that's 7 things that you can pull out of there as promises of God, that's what he's going to do for me. And, what a blessing that is. Those are promises you can depend upon. Those are promises that you can trust, that if you put your faith in God, if you invite his son, Jesus Christ, into your life, then you can be assured that those promises will be real. God will do those things for you. Well, the world's biggest problem is lostness. The world is lost. We live in a broken world. We live in a world that is separated from God, that needs to be restored. And God is doing everything. Um, he's done everything necessary for it to happen. Now it's up to man to respond and to put its faith in him, to really believe him who he is. So the psalmist said, I will satisfy him with a long life, and I will show him my salvation. God is going to reveal to us. I trust that he's revealed that to you. If not, listen and pay attention. Trust your heart. And if the Holy Spirit speaks to you about your salvation, do you need to put your faith in God? I had a wedding last night that I did, and it's probably the biggest wedding I've ever done. There's 400 people there, I'm guessing, and lots of folks. And at the bride and the groom's, command, so to speak, gave a kind of an invitation, led in a sinner's prayer. It was very evangelistic because they wanted this to be a worship time. And I trust that God showed people salvation. That was the whole purpose of their ceremony. That was the whole purpose of the wedding, was to worship and to give God glory, and for him to be able to reveal to people there his salvation. And so I pray that happened out of that. But and then good that in the lost world, excuse me, thank you, in the lost world, that we can still tell people about Jesus, and God is revealing salvation to them. Well, got to go. Bye. God bless y'all.